Every day in Southwest Florida, there are families breaking down and kids are entering the foster care system. These children and their families are waiting to experience hope, homes, and healing. With 4Kids Southwest Florida, you can be a part of transforming their lives and their stories. Hope is extended through prevention. Homes are open for children in foster care. Healing is experienced through trauma-informed care. Join the movement and learn more at 4kidsswfl.org. That's 4kidsswfl.org.
Hey friend, I'm so delighted that you've joined us across your Christian television network. If you're watching us on a digital media platform, I want to encourage you to like it, share it, and also if you're watching it by live streaming, continue to inform others. Now, I'm thrilled to be coming to you from the headquarters of 4Kids. What is 4Kids, you might ask? Well, I'm glad you may have had that question because we're able to sit down with the executive director in Southwest Florida, where this originates usually, Fort Myers, Naples, Florida area, Pastor Rick Jacobs. And
Thank you, Paul.
I'm honored to have you. And the reason why I call you Pastor Rick Jacobs is you are a pastor, but you're going to also shed the light on what 4Kids is. Before we get into what 4Kids is, talk about your background and just a little bit of your journey of how God's raised you up for such a time as this to do what you're doing with 4Kids.
Absolutely, and thanks for having us on today. We're just thrilled. I say even though my wife is not here, she's obviously a huge part of this journey.
Anchor woman.
Yeah, that's right. She's the rock star. But yeah, I stepped into the pastorate over 30 years ago, back in the early 90s, and served 3 churches over the course of that time. One in Fort Myers, one up in Salem, Virginia, and then one here right near headquarters in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And loved that calling. I love the local church, and obviously believe that is God's way to redeem a lost world, and still believe in it, and still, albeit not on a local church staff, now that I'm in this capacity at 4Kids, still serve in the local church and volunteer, and just in a real different capacity, a different look. But my wife and I began dating when we were 16 years old. And at that time, I had an aunt and uncle that I was close to, and they adopted a little boy from Korea. And then subsequently, another little girl was a domestic adoption. And my wife and I saw that picture as we were seriously dating and through college. And we just said, when we get married, we know that adoption is going to be a part of our story one day. And
wow.
Had a heart for it, So fast forward to 2001, we had 3 biological children by that point, and we thought to ourselves, if we're going to adopt, we better get busy, otherwise we're going to end up with 7 kids. And so we stepped in through some friends at our church and into foster care, and realizing that there were kids right in our own community that needed a home. And albeit the goal of foster care is reunification, we want those kids to be able to go back to their parents when possible, but it doesn't always play out that way. But we stepped into foster care in January of 2007 and began fostering children. And right about the 5th one that came into our home, back then, we had the opportunity to adopt. He didn't go back home, so we adopted him. And at this point, I joke and say, after 3 kids, we thought we might have 7. Well, now we do have 7. So we have 3 biological kids. We have 3 children that we've adopted from foster care, had over 30 that have been in and out of our home over the last 17 years or so. And we have another little one that's with us right now, who's actually a sibling of our 2-year-old that we adopted. So we have a 28-year-old and we have a 1-year-old at home that's a foster child whose case plan just moved towards adoption, and we will be giving her a new last name sometime later this year.
That's beautiful. And so you've pastored for over 30 years, but as they heard, the Lord put it on your heart and your wife to adopt. And in America today, is it 100,000 or 400,000 are not adopted? Or what do you know? I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
There's a lot of discrepancy in that number, especially from a national level. But I know, like, even right here in the state of Florida, which is where we serve, there's 18,000 kids in the state of Florida. A lot of times, because we do our recruiting for foster parents within the church.
Wow.
right? So when we go into churches, we want them to know that right here in their own community, some don't realize that it's an issue. They
Yeah.
think that happens in other big cities, but we're in
Yeah.
Southwest Florida. We're not a real big city,
Yeah.
but last year in Southwest Florida, 521 kids were removed from their home.
Wow.
So when we think about that big number of 18,000 in the state, narrow it down to 521 right
Yeah.
here in our area. But then even smaller, just like last week in our region, we
Yeah.
had 23 kids that didn't have a
Yeah.
place to go. So those children are sleeping in offices. They're going into shelters, and sometimes you'll have a 16-year-old sleeping in the same place as a
Yeah.
3-year-old. So that's just it's inexcusable, and so we're asking the church to step up and rise up and to be the answer.
I like that. And even with the recent film of Sound of Hope Possum Trot with your good friend, Bishop Martin, people in the state of Florida can find out about a powerful resource and how, if there's a pastor watching or somebody watching and they want to get an adoption ministry in their church, talk about what For Kids does and some of the core values.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And as I said, the church is the answer for the world, right? For
That's right.
redemption.
It's not the government. It's not a religious church program.
That's right.
It is the church being
Yeah.
the hands and feet of Jesus.
And so with this issue directly, the church is also the answer. At one point in our country, the church was the orphanage. They all existed in churches, and then at some point, we turned that over to the government, and we need to take that back.
Come on.
So what we have decided as an organization at For Kids, we started right here. We're at headquarters. We started about 27 years ago through the local church. And now we are our own entity, our own nonprofit. We expanded to Palm Beach, then up to the Treasure Coast in January of 2022. I left the pastorate to step over back into Fort Myers and launch For Kids in Southwest Florida. We have 5 counties there we serve: Collier, Lee, Charlotte, Glades, and Hendry. And then we've also now expanded down into Miami-Dade. I think there's a couple issues going on down there.
Yes, sir.
But we focus on really 3 things. Our paradigm for ministry is
Talk
hope,
about that.
homes, and healing.
Hope, homes, and healing.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. So hope is really important for us. Obviously, we believe that Jesus is the hope of the world.
That's right.
But when we look in the foster care world, what we want to be able to do is, if we can keep a family together, if we can help resource them, then that's a huge win for us. So we don't want a child to have to be removed from their home and placed in the foster care, because that's traumatic in and of itself. So what hope is, and what we do through that, our prevention initiative, is we partner with another ministry called Care Portal. It's a technology platform, and it basically connects the needs of local community to the church and allows the church to meet those needs. And it's best described through an example. Last December, right in the Fort Myers area, we had recruited one of the local agencies, DCF, the Department of Children and Families, to be a requesting agency. So they're putting needs into the system. They went out, they did an investigation at a home that an abuse call had come. And they got out into that home. They realized there wasn't abuse, there wasn't abandonment, there wasn't neglect. They didn't need to remove these children, but they found 3 children that were sleeping on a floor.
Wow.
In their bedroom.
And why was that?
The family just didn't have the resources to provide. Mom and dad loved them, but they didn't have enough resources to help care for their kids properly.
Wow.
And what we know in our country is that the maltreatment of children is often connected to poverty. And so when we see this situation and realize, wow, we can help here, that DCF employee went back to their office. Normally they would close that case because they didn't need to remove those children. But instead, because they're a part of Care Portal, they took a few minutes, wrote a little narrative, typed it up into their computer, hit send. It immediately alerted all the churches in that zip code that we have recruited to be a part of Care Portal. Those churches saw the situation, saw that here's a family in need. We had one church that clicked, yes, I can help. And in a matter of 3 or 4 days, the church showed up, provided bunk beds, a twin bed, mattresses, bedding, pillow. Got to be out there, got to say, hey, we're also right down the street from you. Our church, 2 miles down the road. We want to serve you. We want to be a part of your story, and we're here to help. So not only meeting this need, but down the road, perhaps we're here for you as well.
That's so refreshing to hear an example of a story just like that, because it shows this church decided to live out James chapter 1, verse 27. I noticed when I walked in the corridor of the headquarters here, James 1:27, for those that say, what is that scripture? You want to shed some light on that?
Yeah, well, pure and undefiled religion is one that cares for the widows and the orphans in their time of need.
Yeah.
And our ministry is based on that premise right there. We want to make sure that the church is caring
Yeah.
for the orphans. That's what we exist
Yeah,
for.
because we can go to church and sing kumbaya all day, so to speak, but if we do not be doers of the word and not just hearers only,
Yeah.
we're not living it out. We understand not everybody's called to do the adoption, but I like what Bishop said, but everyone can play a part in the process.
Yep.
And I think, you have a tremendous with the care portal initiative. That was somebody's alert. Every pastor, or anybody watching can say, hey, let's get connected to the care portal and be the hands and feet of Jesus and have that opportunity when the opportunity presents itself to help meet the practical need. So that therefore they can also see Jesus in reality and have a chance to find discipleship. And I know that's your heart as a pastor.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's plug and play. I mean, how many pastors would just love to know right in our own backyard, here's
Yeah.
a need, but the people don't always show up and ask for those things.
Mm.
And what Care Portal does is identify those needs. We're partnered with over 20 agencies in Southwest Florida.
Wow.
They're inputting those needs, and the churches see them, and they say, yes, I can help.
That's beautiful.
And so it's amazing. So our paradigm, hope, homes, and healing. Hope is that prevention initiative. Homes is really obvious. We want to have a Christian home for every child that comes into care. When I mentioned those 23 kids that need a home right now, they have a choice. Not the kids, but we have a choice as the church to say, we want to provide a Christian home. When we started fostering, we took our 3 younger kids and we sat them down. And I was a pastor and I was involved in many mission trips. And I said, guys, we can't afford as a family to take you to a foreign country on a mission trip every year.
Yeah.
We would love for you to be able to do that, but it's just not in the cards. But what we're going to do is we're going to bring the mission trip home. So
Wow.
every child that we bring to our home is a mission. And so we're going to, whether it be for a week, a month, a year, we've had some kids for 2.5 years that have been with us that have gone and left our home, or then sometimes for our lifetime. We're going to love and show them what Jesus is so that they can understand that there's someone that loves them and there's a father that loves them without fail.
That's awesome. And, it's also neat that your model is to actually keep the families together. And if they, are able to go back and the environment's the right scenario and it's stable, emotionally and everything else, for that child to be able to go back to their biological parents if they have to, and so that's a win-win all the way around. Now, what do you say to some people who say, well, adoption is just a big money industry, it's like churches today? Because some people have been hurt and they've seen that there can be a misperception or there could be some realities in that. What talk about maybe how 4Kids operates, and then what would you say to that? Speak to that a little bit as a pastor.
Well, first of all, anybody who's doing foster care to get rich, it needs to take up another business, because you're not in it to get rich. I mean, obviously we hear some of the really horrific stories out there, but that's why we're asking the church to step up and make a difference. I love the quote, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing.
Come on.
And there's no better good people, right, than those that are called by Jesus.
Yes.
And so that's what we're asking them to do, is to really make a difference in an area that really almost kids, I've been on some mission trips and I go to other parts in the world and kids are literally discarded sometimes because of their special needs. But what we're seeing in our nation right now is that we have kids that are ready to be adopted. They're in the foster care system. And in a sense, the church has a disregard for what's going on. So we really need the church to rise up. We need to open up our eyes to realize, hey, it's not easy. It is definitely not easy. My wife and I, we're in our 50s. When we have our youngest that graduates, we're going to be close to 70 years old. I recently shared at a church and challenged them. It was recruiting more foster parents, and I basically talked about that scripture, hear ye, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And that is based on the Jewish word Shema. And Shema can be wrapped up almost as the whole Old Testament plea. And it is this. Shema means this: yes, Lord. And basically, hear you love the Lord your God with all your heart, is the Jewish response. The Hebrew response is to say yes, but we don't even know the question. And so I've been challenging our churches to basically, we have shirts at Four Kids that say yes. And sometimes I'm out in public and people walk up and they'll say yes, and I'm like, oh, that's great. We'll drop off some
Yeah.
foster kids in the morning.
Yeah.
I
That's
wish
right.
it was that easy. But
Yeah.
basically, we're asking the churches to say yes to Jesus and then let him fill in the blanks
Yeah.
with what the question is.
You
And that's
know,
what we need for our foster kids.
yeah, yeah. He brings the resources you need to do the endeavor. If God calls you, he equips the called, and then he also provides what you need for that journey. Talk about why you think it is sometimes as a church or as a body of Christ or church leadership for that matter, it seems like we're so inward focused. We're not living out that great commission mandate. That is not a great suggestion, as my good friend Pastor Dan Betzer would say. It's a great commission. We co-labor with God to do whatever he has called us to do. But even in this space, why do you think is it a misperception of what they think the adoption process is, or what's your perspective?
I think there can be some confusion around that, but I think also it's just in our country. I mean, we're busy people, and the church is a microcosm of our country, and we are busy churches. I'm not endorsing it, but I did read the book years ago, Simple Church. I mean, I just narrowing our focus would be great. But one of the things that we talk with churches about often is that foster care and stepping into this arena isn't something else to do. See, like when I sat on the other side of the table as a pastor, especially as an executive pastor, you get all these calls of people coming in and everybody wants to approach the church about doing something different, right? This doesn't have to be something you add on. You know, when we show up at a church for kids and we show up at a church and say, hey, here's the need, and we're asking Christians, we're asking foster parents to step up and say, I can love on a kid. When we leave and walk away, the church really doesn't have any more responsibility in a sense. It's like we have some individuals that step up and rise up from that,
Yeah.
and they start fostering, but it's not another ministry. You know, we do have other churches that really embrace what we do and get involved in wraparound support and care portal. But at, grassroots, what we need is more Christian foster parents.
Come on.
You know, we'd love more people in care portal. We love wraparound support. We obviously love financial support. Close to 70% of our funding comes from churches and from individuals and organizations.
And you're a nonprofit.
We are a nonprofit. But what we need is more foster parents. So I've had churches, and I say, we don't want to come and ask for money. We don't want to come and ask you to add a foster care ministry. We want to come and challenge your people to maybe one or two families to step in and become a foster parent.
You got 23 in Southwest Florida, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe somebody's watching, or those around the country that are watching can say, you know what, I want to be one of those 23. Or there's other places, but talk about, if you will, Rick, some of the other initiatives as you move forward, because this is an ongoing situation. What is Four Kids doing to prevent? Because that's one of the big initiatives you do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about obviously that prevention initiative, and we started off talking about that paradigm of hope, homes, and healing. And healing is that final component. Actually, we're sitting here in the EPIC room. EPIC for us is a trauma-informed therapy. We call it EPIC therapy. It stands for emotional, physical, intellectual, and character. It's a well-rounded approach to care for kids that are living or have lived in trauma. I always say, if a kid gets removed from their home, that's traumatic, right? I mean, so obviously they were living in trauma already, but they're removed from their homes, removed from their parents, and placed with strangers, and that's traumatic. And so what we do through EPIC is we have close to 30 therapists between all of our 13 counties that are providing trauma-informed care for those kids and also for the foster parents. One of the things that's really significantly different about Four Kids than other agencies in the state of Florida is that the typical foster parent in the state of Florida, 14 months and they quit. It's not an easy call. But at Four Kids, when they're taking advantage of the EPIC therapy, which is available at no cost to them, and the wraparound support that we provide, instead of 14 months, they're serving for 38 months. That is significantly different.
Yeah.
Also, because the church, we believe in Christians, called to this and stepping
That's right.
into it.
That's right.
One of the things that the state of Florida measures is what we call placement stability. So, how often a child might bounce around from home to home. The more placements that a child has in foster care, the more likely they are to be unsuccessful in life. There's a huge connection to child trafficking, incarceration, and homelessness. Over 50% of all those populations I just mentioned spent time in foster care.
Wow.
And so we want to redefine what foster care looks like by the church being involved.
I love
And
it.
so that placement stability for the state, they have a goal that a child wouldn't move more than 4.25 times over the course of basically 3 years.
Wow.
And we look at that and we think that's a pretty low bar. In Southwest Florida, we aren't meeting that goal. We're up over 6 moves for a child over the course
Wow.
of 3 years. But if a child is placed in a 4 kids home, that number last year was around 0.76 moves for every 3 years.
Wow.
So it's a significant difference, and that's because we are doing it through the church and through believers.
That's amazing. What is your vetting process like at 4 kids to determine if a family is a fit to be a foster parent?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, for us, and we're on CTN, and we can
Yeah.
talk about this
Yeah.
openly. We want our families to be Christ followers.
That's
we
awesome.
recruit through the churches. We step
Yeah.
into churches and we recruit families. They have to have a pastoral reference. It's a character reference.
Beautiful.
We want people to understand that this is a calling, and we want the pastor or the leader of their church to be able to say, "Hey, we endorse the Lodato family."
Yeah.
They can step in and be
Yeah.
foster families. But then beyond that, we're partnered with DCF, and for us locally, Children's Network Southwest Florida. We work hand in hand with them. So we work on recruiting families, training them, licensing them, and we submit that license to Children's Network and therefore to DCF, and they ultimately issue that license. So they're vetted the same way as any other agency would. Fingerprinting,
Yeah.
level 2 background check. We want our kids to be safe.
Absolutely.
But we take that additional step of saying, hey, we want some character references, and we want your church to endorse you as well.
In hopes to give them a biblical worldview foundation.
Absolutely.
So that's beautiful. Well, any parting words you want to say to those people that are watching? Obviously, I want to encourage the viewers to make sure and connect with this wonderful organization. Maybe you don't sense a call to adopt, but you can help fund that purpose and give something as you purpose in your heart. If you didn't give a blessed dime, God's love for you is not going to change. But know this, that every dollar is a destiny, and you can make an impact in somebody's life. Talk about what you want to say to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it so great. I mean, but I've said it already. Our biggest need is that we need Christian families in Southwest Florida and all 13 of our counties to step in, to lean in, and make the difference in the life of a child. And if you can't get involved, not every person is called to open up their homes. Then we obviously ask you to open up your prayer life. Pray for us. We need prayer for our families. We need wraparound support for those families. Plug in. Look to volunteer at some of our events. And then obviously, yes, it takes money to do what we do, to provide counsel for the kids, to provide events for the kids, and just to sustain the ministry that we are doing. So we appreciate that financial support as well.
That's great. And again, those that are watching, especially if you're a pastor, talk about the Care Portal again real quick.
Yeah, Care Portal. And if you want to get involved with that, we have someone that we employ on our team in Southwest Florida. All he does is focus in connecting the church to those needs in the community. We have close to 30 churches already in Southwest Florida, so reach out.
And Rick, for those that are watching this around the country and say, well, I don't have 4 kids in my backyard, you might have a connection to refer them to possibly a faith-based organization that does adoption. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We love to try to connect folks. We have people that we meet often. We're at a conference, we're traveling, and they see and they hear, they want to be a part of it. And so we always try to connect them to someplace in their community, and we'll do the work to try to find it for you.
It's wonderful. When I walk in here, I see men and women working together, and men in leadership that have been doing this for a long time, 25, 24, 27 years, as you said. I mean, that says that this is not a job, but a call. And that's pretty awesome. And I just thank God for all you're doing. We'll go to a sneak peek of what 4Kids is and a little bit about their outreaches.
Hope has a face. It's 26-year-old Brittany, one of nearly 38 million Americans living in poverty. and she's doing it on her own with 2 kids. Getting behind on her electric bill can mean the difference between keeping her family together and losing her kids to foster care if her apartment is found unsafe. Keeping this family together requires hope in the form of a $228 check from a new friend. Homes have a story. 12-year-old Sean is one of nearly 400,000 kids living in foster care in the U.S. His story has been filled with hurt in 4 different foster homes in 2 years. Like thousands of other kids in foster care, Sean hasn't lived with his little brother in over a year. But home can be found for Sean in the form of a family who won't give up, and one who makes room for his brother too. Healing has a name. 6-year-old Sophia can't sleep through the night because of what she's experienced. Her night terrors persist, which means she can't stay awake at school. She's not alone. 90% of kids in foster care have experienced trauma. Healing can be possible for Sophia. Through connection and safety, a new future can be unlocked. Hope, homes, and healing are more than just ideas. They are in the heartbeat of the hurting and a lifeline to our community's most vulnerable kids and families.
Every day in Southwest Florida, there are families breaking down and kids are entering the foster care system. These children and their families are waiting to experience hope, homes, and healing. With 4 Kids Southwest Florida, you can be a part of transforming their lives and their stories. Hope is extended through prevention. Homes are open for children in foster care. Healing is experienced through trauma-informed care. Join the movement and learn more at 4kidsswfl.org. That's 4kidsswfl.org.
And I just want to say to you that we love you. We thank God for your life. Stand up and be counted. Contend for the faith where God has planted you and make a difference in someone's life, particularly in the space of adoption. You can be the hands and feet of Jesus. All right, friend? Thank you, Rick Jacobs, for all that you do.
Paul.
And thank you for all that you do, friend, that are watching. Until next week, same time, same place. We will see you soon across your Christian television network. God bless you. We love you.